Welcome to the last video in our secondary sources tour. So in this video, we're going to talk about legal periodicals and current awareness, and we're going to take a look at uniform laws and restatements. So a couple of species of legal periodicals are law reviews and bar journals. To give you a sense of the difference between the two, I'm guessing at least some of you, or if not most of you, are already familiar with law reviews and know that they are typically associated with law schools. Those of you that have had to do site checks can personally testify to the fact that they are very heavily footnoted. Some of you may have even written comments or notes. So in contrast to law reviews that are these kind of scholarly sources that aren't focused on a particular geographic area, the American Bar Association does have some national journals, but a lot of bar journals are statewide or regionals. They tend to be practical and really very topical in keeping up with what's currently going on. Newspapers and newsletters, we saw in the first video a subject matter specific newsletter for torts, and there are a lot of those, all kinds of different practice areas. In contrast, newspapers tend to cover the legal scene and whole area overall. So not any specific topic or industry, lawyering in a given area. There's some other really great current awareness sources that you should be aware of. Overall, Law 360 is a really fantastic source. BNA is a really fantastic source. They're broken down topically by subject matter in a lot of cases. And they're not just useful for keeping up with current legal issues as you kind of go along in your career. It's also a way to kind of keep track of what's going on with particular large companies or even small companies and do business development. And there are specialized sources in kind of any and every industry and practice area you can think of. These are just some of the big broad ones. Definitely ask other attorneys in your field what they like, what they use. It's a great way to find sources. We're going to look at bar journals in this video. If you want to sort of look more at scholarly research, as I mentioned in the first video, this is again the link to that guide on how to do scholarly research. So what we're going to look at is just one index and one full text source. So Legal Source includes the index to legal periodicals, and Hein Online is another alternative to find law reviews. It's also another alternative to find bar journals. Both are going to be on West and Lexis as well. I just want to take the opportunity to show you Hein Online if you haven't been using it. The difference between index and full text searching. So in an index, you are just searching a really small record. Think of it as the amount of information that in the old days when people still used index cards and card catalogs, it's what would have fit on an index card. So just kind of the basic bibliographic information about what you're looking at, author, title, some descriptor words, those kind of subject headings that we looked at in a catalog that someone that's read the article has assigned to it. You might get an abstract if you're lucky. Whereas in full text, you're searching everything. You're searching the full text. So all of that stuff plus everything in the whole article and all. So indexes are a really great way to get a very focused search, a really on point search. To get to both Legal Source and Hein Online, you can get to them through the digital resources on the website. So both of these are sources where you have the VPN set up. So there's a link also on that page on how to set up the VPN if you haven't done that yet. And if you have issues, help at law.ucla.edu. IT can definitely help you with any VPN issues that you have. So there we go, Legal Source, Hein Online. And also notice that Law 360 is there. It's also available on Lexis. But if you just wanted to search Law 360, you could do it that way. So what's the kind of example of, so an example of the kind of thing that you might want to look for in periodicals, right? So this is driverless cars, kind of keep up with what's going on in this space if you were just interested in it, either because you assigned it or because you just think this might be an area where you want to write or develop business. I'm going to search Legal Source first, and we'll look at how small the record is in a couple of slides. I do highly recommend that since you're searching such a focused record, it's always a good idea to think of synonyms when you're searching, but when you're searching a really focused record, you may or may not find every variation in the same way that you might in full text and in the whole article and all the footnotes. It's also, Legal Source does also index books as well. So it's another way to find books on a particular topic. The full text will not be in there, but you'll at least know that the book exists, and then you can go find it in a library catalog. This is an example of your results list. There's not full text for everything in Legal Source, but there is full text for a lot. And to pull up one of these records, I don't have to go too far into my search. I only went 4 results in to find this super helpful looking article that's pretty recent that gives you a 50-state survey on regulation for autonomous vehicles, for self-driving vehicles. And this is also a good way to show you an example of how little of a record you're searching. All you're searching is just author, where it came from, so the name of the journal it came from, and the subject headings. In this case, the person that did the indexing actually did give you a lot of synonyms, so they did a really good job here. That's not, unfortunately, always going to be the case. And then if we look at the abstract, we can get a sense of this is sort of a shorter article that's kind of in this nice sweet spot where it's probably pretty meaty, but it's not as long as a law review article would be. You get a sense too, right? They're talking to lawyers, judges, lawmakers, really kind of like a practical article where they're trying to keep track of current developments in maybe a more practice-oriented way than a law review might. So Hein Online, when you get to the homepage, it will tell you to log in. You just click the button as long as you're on the VPN. There's no individual login for Hein Online. It's IP authenticated. So click the login and you will get to Hein Online. You'll notice it is another way to get law review articles. They have this ABA. They have if you just want to look for ABA journals, that's its own database. In this case, we're going to look at bar journals. Hein's searching is not the easiest searching in the world. You'll notice, though, that I did strip down my search to just a couple of synonyms, as I did a whole bunch of experimentation. And because this is a full text database, I was getting tons and tons of just irrelevant results when I searched with that broad range of synonyms that I used in the index. And unlike Weston, Lexis, and Bloomberg, where they make proximity searching very easy, Hein's proximity searching is just not quite that sophisticated. So you may have to do a few searches in Hein or kind of play around with your searches. But this is a great example of why you might want a bar journal or one of these kind of local newspaper articles. This is just one page, and it's still chock full of California case law you might want to look at, California civil code you might want to look at, and just a really nice focused article. So a lot of information quickly. So bar reviews are great for that because they're meant for people that are extremely busy, that are, billing by the 6-minute increment. You may also want non-legal scholarly articles in practice. I actually did use them occasionally. As I mentioned in the first video, I did healthcare. So every once in a while, I actually had to go find medical articles because you might need them to make a factual argument, which is why I would use them. But you might also, if you're doing something that's more policy oriented, it's a good way to see how non-lawyers are thinking about this kind of thing. It's also a way to find the names of expert witnesses, and they are used as persuasive authority sometimes in courts. So the Supreme Court does have a long history of using social science as persuasive authority. One of the most famous examples of this was before Brandeis was a justice on the court. He was the Attorney General of Oregon and won his argument in part with a whole lot of social sciences research in this case. And so that's why using social sciences to make your arguments is in this way is often known as a Brandeis brief. That's a term that you might hear. The very famous footnote 11 in Brown v. Board, the court was relying on social science rather than law there as well. However, how persuasive social sciences research is really depends on the judge. And this is, again, this is just the Supreme Court, but this is going to be true for any judge or justice you argue in front of, right? So you can see Rehnquist, not a huge fan of social sciences research. In contrast, Breyer really loves it. And so, just to give you another example, Justice Roberts, a little skeptical about this kind of research. You can at least try to use it as persuasive authority sometimes. If you really, really want to do a deeper dive into non-legal research as well, that LibGuide, those videos that we mentioned at the very beginning, definitely look in there. Always also, please feel free to come talk to us at the reference desk. Librarians at law schools, definitely we do a ton of non-legal scholarly searching. So we are more than happy to talk to you about how to do it. I'm just going to show you Google Scholar, simply because, not because I think it's the best way to do social sciences research, but just because Google Scholar exists. And if you hadn't already encountered it, I'm using this without my VPN on, and you can see I can still get some free articles. So moving on from scholarly research to restatements and uniform laws. So we're talking about these together simply because the goal of both of them is to bring some clarity, consistency, predictability across the 50 states, which are sometimes really disparate in various areas of law. So for restatements, although certainly they talk about statutes, the focus is really on the common law. So it tries to harmonize the common law across all 50 states to the degree that's possible, or where there are huge differences between jurisdictions. And we'll talk about those. And the reason why you might want a restatement, not just to kind of get this basic law, but because courts cite them really frequently. All the secondary sources that you are likely to use when you're citing that you're likely to cite to when you're making arguments to a court, restatements are really way up there. And then uniform laws are these attempts to harmonize statutes. So state legislatures sometimes do just take them wholesale. Sometimes they take parts of them. And of course, state legislatures are under no obligation to incorporate uniform laws into their own laws. So their restatements are published by the American Law Institute. There are also principles that ALI publishes, and these are for kind of less established areas of law. Probably ALI also does some model codes, probably most famously the Model Penal Code that you might have encountered first year during your 1L criminal law class. And you probably also encountered UCC when you took contracts. So ALI and the Uniform Law Commission, which is one of the places that does uniform laws that we'll talk about in a sec, developed the UCC together. And I think to help understand why restatements are persuasive to judges, there are a lot of judges who are part of ALI. I will show the restatement I worked on in a couple of slides, but I was lucky enough to get to go to the ALI's annual meeting one year because I helped one of the professors here work on the charitable restatement. And judges are very active participants in the ALI annual meeting. So it's really a good way for judges and attorneys and academics to all talk to each other. And judges really get a say and get listened to in those meetings. Restatements are subject matter specific. Charities, like I mentioned, our own Professor Horwitz is one of the reporters for the restatement and did a huge amount of work on it, and I helped her with that. And so the way that the restatement is set up is it starts with so each section starts with a black letter rule. Then there's a comment. That black letter rule, again, is that attempt to harmonize law across the country. And there's a comment explaining the history and the purpose of that rule, often includes some hypotheticals. And then the reporter's notes are the supporting primary and secondary sources that were used to generate that rule. And again, I can tell you from working on this, the other reason why these are really well respected in courts is these things take years to write and involve a whole lot of meetings, not just that annual meeting, but there are also these much narrower subject matter meetings where it's attorneys that are really specialists in that area will all get together and talk for days about these rules. Goodness knows the reporters do a whole lot of work. There's also some contribution from a whole lot of experts in that subject matter area. So these things are really well researched and so very persuasive and very authoritative. They're in a lot of places. West, Lexis, they are also in Hine Online, and Hine has the drafts. So if you ever needed those, or if you needed some historical materials, Hine also has the biggest collection of historical ALI materials that you're going to be able to access. There's also case citations. So you can see tons and tons of drafts for the restatement of contracts going back to 1964. So if you really wanted to see the history of a particular rule in the restatement, right? Like I say, these take a long time to generate, and there's a lot of back and forth that goes into creating the final restatement. There are case citations available in Hine and West and Lexis as well. So uniform laws are drafted, the ones that we're going to look at are drafted by the Uniform Law Commission. So that's probably the biggest organization that does these. Their goal is to provide nonpartisan laws, trying to sort of harmonize state statutory law. The Uniform Law Commission is not the only organization that drafts model laws. So as mentioned, ALI does it. The American Bar Association does some that are pretty heavily used. At this point, there are also sort of more political organizations that write model laws, as you may know. And then there are also some subject-focused organizations. But the uniform laws drafted by the Uniform Law Commission are usually classified as either uniform acts or model acts. If you look on their website, they'll classify them these two ways. The Uniform Law Commission is calling something a uniform act. They think it has a reasonable possibility of enactment in a lot of states. So just some examples, right? Like the Uniform Trust Code, a lot of states do use. Uniform Arbitration Act. Model acts are when they don't think a lot of states are going to adopt the act. So if you look at the Uniform Law Commission, it has a really nice website where it lets you search and browse acts. If we look at the Trust Code, like I mentioned, that's one that a lot of states have adopted, at least some parts of. It will show you the year of adoption in the states, the bill within the state that was used to adopt it. And so that can actually be really helpful to help you track down, and see the legislative history within a given state for the adoption of the code, of the uniform law. It'll tell you as you scroll down below that map, you can see some related things, some related acts by ULC. They keep track of legislatures that are currently where some or part or all of a particular code has been introduced. And then of course you can get the documents themselves, including some historical materials in the archive. And you can get an act with comments. So that's actually often really helpful too. They explain like why they drafted things in a particular way. But to get even more detail, you would want to go to Uniform Laws Annotated. This is nice because it's free, but Uniform Laws Annotated, this is on Westlaw as well, gives you a whole lot more information. So if we go into this, just to show you an example, if we go back to our West's Uniform Laws Annotated, this first line here that says references and annotations gives you those adoption dates, those citing references, notes of decisions for the code as a whole. So, right, so this is giving you the table of the jurisdictions where at least some part of the Uniform Trust Code has been adopted and what the effective date is. More than just that bill, it shows you where it gives you the statutory citation. Up here, if you click history, you can see what the state variations are across the code as a whole. So in contrast, when you're in individual sections, you will see state variations for an individual section. So sometimes you will want to see every change that Alabama or Colorado or California made from the trust code as a whole. But there are also times where you're just going to want to know, what did states do with this particular section? So those are the two different ways you would look. And then once you are in an individual section of one of these uniform codes annotated, you will get references and annotations not for the code overall, but just for one particular article within the code. And those are the little tricks to watch out for when you're using uniform laws annotated in WEST. And that is kind of the last thing that I have to say about uniform laws. And I really look forward to seeing you all September 10th. Thanks so much for your patience and attention, and I'll see you soon.